And then I'll go around. Oh, yes, I got it right.
In 1985, 13-year-old Karen Patterson was shot to death in her bed in North Charleston, South Carolina. Her killer was a neighbor who had already served 10 years of a life sentence for murdering his half-brother Charles in 1970. Joe Atkins cut the Pattersons' phone lines and then entered bearing a machete, a sawed-off shotgun, and a pistol. Karen's parents were chased out of their home by Atkins, according to Charlene Hall of ProDeathPenalty.com. Karen's mom ran to the Atkins home nearby where Joe had already murdered his adopted father, Benjamin Atkins, 75, who had worked to persuade parole authorities to release Joe from the life imprisonment he was in. People like the man above, who have murdered before and then are given a second chance, murder again, are deserving of the capital punishment. Not only are these criminals a danger to the community, but if they are confronted by police, they are more than likely willing to try to take the lives of the police officers as well. The history of capital punishment dates back to the 18th century BC under King Hammurabi of Babylonia, according to facts about capital punishment on Buzzle.com, which codified 25 different crimes punishable by the death penalty. In the Draconian Code of Athens during the 7th century BC, death was the punishment for all crimes. In the 1700s, 222 crimes were punishable by death in Britain. In America, the first recorded execution was that of Captain George Kendall in Virginia in 1608 for spying for Spain. In 1612, Virginia enacted the Divine, Moral, and Martial laws, which provided the death penalty for even minor offenses, such as stealing grapes, killing chickens, and trading with Indians. In modern times, there are 38 states in the U.S. military that have death penalty statutes, according to the Death Penalty Information Center. Those states use lethal injection, electric chair, gas chamber, hanging, and the firing squad, with lethal injection being the preferred method. The federal government has used hanging, the electric chair, and the gas chamber, but was authorized in 1993 by the then President Bush to use lethal injection as cited by the Death Penalty Information Center. Crimes punishable by the death penalty include first-degree murder, first-degree murder with aggravating circumstances, aggravated murder, treason, first-degree kidnapping, capital drug trafficking, and aggravated sexual assault of a minor. Although in June 2008, DeathPenaltyInformation.org stated that the Supreme Court struck down the Louisiana law as cruel and unusual punishment if the victim did not die. That was some of the history of the death penalty, and here are some of the reasons why I believe the capital punishment should be used. According to a Department of Justice study released in 2001, 8% of those sentenced to death had been convicted of a previous homicide, and according to Death Penalty and Sentencing Information by Dudley Sharp, 9 to 15% of those on death row have committed at least one additional murder prior to the murder which put them on death row. 9 to 15%. 67% of those had prior felony convictions. 42% had an active criminal status. And 14% of those were sentenced to death from 1988 to 94 had received 2 or more death sentences. Here are some of the stories of these repeat offenders. Philip Jablonski. Carol Spadoni married Jablonski on June 16, 1982, while he was serving prison sentence for a 1979 murder of his third wife, Melinda Kimball. After she became his pen pal correspondent in prison, Jablonski murdered his prison pen pal wife and her mother. And the day before those murders, he had murdered Fatima Van, 38, in Indio, about 25 miles from Palm Springs. Van was found shot and sexually mutilated in the desert with "I love Jesus" carved in her back. Now get this. It seems Philip Jablonski, now in prison after all those murders, placed an ad for a pen pal, Jewish death row inmate, white, 51 years old, seeking understanding and open female or male for honest correspondence. Amateur poet, artist will answer all correspondence received. Chad Allen Lee, convicted of murder, sentenced to other than death, released and went on a murder spree, murdering Linda Reynolds, a pizza delivery person, and 9 days later robbed and murdered David Lacey, a taxi cab driver. Lee then robbed a mini market 7 days after that, shooting the owner, Harold Drury, multiple times without reason. Jamar Arnold, who, while on death row, murdered another death row inmate by stabbing him in the forehead with a sharpened spike, proving that not even death sentence can prevent murder until the sentence has been carried out. Kenneth McDuff, sentenced to death penalty but overturned by Furman, subsequently released and murdered as many as 19 young women, finally executed in 1998 for the murder of Melissa Ann Northrup, who once remarked, "Killing a woman is like killing a chicken. They both squawk." Children, according to the CDC, made up 2.57% of all homicides from 1990 to 95. John McRae, Michigan, Florida, life for murder of an 8-year-old boy. He was a pedophile. Paroled in 1971, convicted of another murder of a boy after parole in Michigan in 1998. Charges are pending on 2 other counts in Florida. Timothy Buss murdered a 5-year-old girl, sentenced to 25 years in 1981. Paroled in 93, murdered 10-year-old boy, condemned in 96. Jimmy Lee Gray, who was free on parole from an Arizona conviction for killing a 16-year-old high school girl, kidnapped, sodomized, and suffocated a 3-year-old Mississippi girl. Wayne Henry Garrison, 42, was convicted of first-degree murder in the death of Justin Wiles, 13, of Tulsa. As a teenager, Garrison had killed 2 children in Tulsa. Police earlier said the circumstances of those killings were similar to Justin's death. With these in mind, here are some points on why capital punishment should be carried out on these people. Dead criminals don't kill. It is easier for a person to escape imprisonment in the long run, but no one can escape death. According to Sharp, the Stanford Law Review of 1188 stated that thoroughly 52,000 state prison inmates serving time for murder in 1984, an estimated 810 had previously been convicted of murder and had killed 821 persons following their previous murder convictions. Execution of each of these inmates would have saved 821 lives. 821 lives were lost because these people were not executed on their first murder convictions. And then there's the victim's mercy. Laws should provide justice, according to Buzzle.com articles on death penalty. We follow the law so that we get justice when what happened to us is unfair. Even the victims ask for mercy, plead for their lives, but the criminals show no mercy. Why should the law be merciful to the criminal? Then there is the cost. According to Sharp, as of 1994, death penalty cases average $1.88 million per 6 years until execution, with new habeas corpus laws to reform the length between judgment and execution. Now, if you compare that 6 years for life without parole, the criminals could be incarcerated for 20 to 50 years. At 50 years, that totals around $3 million. One of the USA's largest death rows is in Texas. As of 1996, according to Sharp, with 442 inmates, of which 229, or 52%, have been on death row for over 6 years. or 10% have been on death row for over 15 years. 8 for over 20 years. 60 inmates nationwide have been on death row over 18 years. Capital punishment should be used, but used swiftly. In conclusion, capital punishment has long been used to keep society safe. Yes, some innocent lives are lost in the process, but with individuals who have no regard for human life or are willing to kill, maim, or rape, sometimes the only way to keep society safe is to take the one life that is bent on taking someone else's life. We may never know the total truth, but we must keep society safe.